Will Rian Johnson's new trilogy use the Jedi, or will he explore the origins of the Force? I discuss this and more in this video, plus I have an extended discussion about this with PJ of Star Wars Coffee. But first, I'm Mike, and I want to welcome you back to Force Within TV, where we're building a theory crafting Star Wars community, and we'd love you to join us by subscribing. But back to that question, is Rian going to use the Jedi in his upcoming trilogy? Well, he could delve deeper into the story of the Guardian of the Whills instead of using the Jedi, their origins, why they are different from the Jedi, the history of Jeddah. But why would Johnson use the Guardian of the Whills? Well, I think Rian really likes this idea that anyone can be a Jedi. This is why he made Rey an orphan girl from Jakku, not a Kenobi or a Skywalker. It's why he had a slave boy at the end of the movie using the Force. And he also gets across in The Last Jedi that the Force does not belong to anyone, and it certainly doesn't belong to families. It can manifest in anyone in the galaxy. And the Guardians of the Whills seem to take this one step further from what I know. They are ordinary people, but they're able to tap into the Force anyway, even though they're not Force sensitive. And I think Rian would enjoy exploring this. But if there is one weakness to this argument, it's that Rian Johnson likes to create his own things. Just look at The Last Jedi. It has tons of new aliens, new fantastic Force powers, many new locations, like the Rebel base on Crate. And one of my criticisms of the movie is it just doesn't use a lot of the things from the original trilogy or prequels that have already been set up. So it makes sense that he would want to use something that he created for The Last Jedi, or totally make something new. But if he was going to take an element of The Last Jedi and expand on it, I'd personally like to see him expand on the background of the Prime Jedi. Going back to this point in time would allow Rian to truly be creative and teach us about the true balance in the Force, something that is complex and surrounded in mystery. And of course, not all the mystery of the Force would be uncovered. That would just be horrible. But a Jedi origin story would be fantastic and would add to the story of the saga films by showing us that just how lost the Jedi were in the Clone Wars. But now I've brought on PJ from Star Wars Coffee to talk more about the possibilities of Rian Johnson using the Jedi in his trilogy. Welcome to the channel, PJ.
Oh, thanks for having me. Glad we could finally do this.
So let's get right into it here. Do you think Rian Johnson could revisit the Jedi versus Sith Wars that we've seen from Legends?
You know, I think anything with Rian is possible. He's clearly a very creative and a very bright guy. He knows what he wants, and that's very clear in the director and the Jedi. He knows what he wants, and he knows how to craft a story that's really bigger than any of the characters that's in it. So whether he does that or whether he goes a different direction, I just think it'll be good regardless.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so too. He's definitely, that's something I discussed in the videos. He likes to do original things. So I'm not sure about pulling from Legends. He certainly didn't seem to do that in The Last Jedi. Though he did come up, remember with the Force projection, he did sort of call out a book. I forget what it was, but he said, look, this has been in Legends. It has been mentioned before. So that was,
he was getting a lot of grief for that. And he was getting a lot of grief for that. So he said, yes, this is a thing. I did not make this up, which was really good.
Yeah, it was awesome. Moving on to question number 2 here. What do you think about Rian, say, exploring the Prime Jedi or the origin of the Jedi? Would you like that?
I think that would be something very cool to see in live action. I'm not sure that a casual fan would care about that as much as someone, say, you or me, who spends a lot of time thinking about this and being involved in this. But personally, I think that's something that I would absolutely love to see. And if Rian did it, there's no doubt in my mind that he would do it in a very satisfying way.
Yeah, I like how you bring that up. Yeah, it's probably something not everyone is dreaming about, right? And but yeah, it would be so cool to see what the Prime Jedi was all about. How did things happen in the beginning for the Jedi, and how did they get off track? Moving on to question number 3, what do you think the chances are that Rian won't use the Jedi at all?
You know, I'm not really sure what Rian has up his sleeve, but I think based on his ending of The Last Jedi, it wouldn't surprise me if his trilogy didn't use any Jedi, or that if he did decide to use them, he would do it with a character at the beginning in his first film on them just becoming on the path of becoming a Jedi and kind of finding their way to that. And then the second 2 movies would be about them learning the ways of the Jedi. So it would be kind of cool to see how he interprets someone actually learning the ways of the Jedi and the teachings that fall into them, and how that would relate to the original trilogy, or not the original, the prequels, the way that George Lucas had Anakin kind of do it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good point, actually. All right, so let's move on to question number 4 then. Who do you think Ryan would use in his story other than the Jedi? Say maybe like
That's a
in Guardians of the Whills, or
I would actually really like to see the Guardians of the Whills. I think that was a really cool arc in the Clone Wars. And I think that it's, even though it's a very broad question, I know that Ryan really likes his creatures. And again, going back to that director in the Jedi, they shot a whole thing for Canto Bight that he didn't end up using in the film, but it was all live action creatures that they spent a ton of money on because he likes the practical effects. And I think that the possibilities are actually endless when it comes to Ryan based on the extra film that he does. But I think the Guardians of the Whills thing, if he does go down the path of a first Jedi and following the steps and how you become it, that would be fantastic to see, especially in live action. That'd be a great visual.
I think so too. And yeah, I absolutely love the director and the Jedi. Very, very cool behind the scenes there. So moving on to question number 5, PJ, let people know a little bit about your favorite character when it comes to Star Wars.
Well, I grew up in the prequel era, so when I was a kid, about 6, 7, or 8, I was all about Anakin. I thought he looked extremely BA. The Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith, the way Hayden Christensen, despite all of the hate that he seems to get, but 10 years later, everybody seems to love him for some reason. I've always loved him. The way he handled the lightsaber was fantastic. He clearly knew what he was doing. He had that down pat. He looked awesome. I thought the acting was great. So as a kid, it was Anakin, but the older I've gotten, I fell in love with the character of Luke and Mark Hamill as a person. If I had to say someone was my spirit animal, it would be Mark Hamill. He's just such a great actor, and he really gets through all of the points, and he seems to be a lot like Luke in the sense that he's always very optimistic and very hopeful and looking on the...
Yeah, for sure. And I also love Luke. He's my number one. It really comes down to that moment of, willing to being able to sacrifice himself for his father, right? I just think that is like the best moment in movies, period. I also really liked what the Clone Wars did with Anakin. I thought that Anakin in the Clone Wars series, the television series, I really liked that character. Really explained him a little bit more, and I could really see the ties to Vader. So definitely love that character as well. But Luke, I am definitely a Luke guy as well. But moving on to another question here. What can people expect to find on Star Wars Coffee?
Well, as I like to say, I'm a canon man. If it's canon, I like to know more about that. I'm heavily invested in the canon because I focus on the live action films the most, but I love to just go through all of the movies and dissect it frame by frame. I don't get tired of watching these things. I watch them, I dissect them. I always find something new, and I always think that something small could be the seed that goes on to be a really big theory, which is kind of really what I love to do. And I feel like even if it's something like Ray's parents, Ryan kind of gave us an answer, but he said it's not for sure. I just kind of love digging into that and just finding all of these little things. So I'm a canon man.
Yeah, absolutely. And I am definitely also a canon man and a theory guy. I love digging in and coming up with those ideas. So I really enjoy your channel, and I hope people will head on over to Star Wars Coffee and check it out. We also have a discussion about Luke Skywalker coming up, so I will be on PJ's channel, Star Wars Coffee, for that as well. But PJ, where can people find you online other than your channel?
I am on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. My new revamped intro on my channel features Matt the Radar Technician. He says, follow me so you don't get angry. But realistically, I use Twitter the most. So if you want to pick one place and you don't want to have me in all of your timelines, Twitter's the place to go, at SW Coffee YouTube.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming on the channel. Please, everybody, head on over, if you don't know who PJ is, over at Star Wars Coffee, and make sure you subscribe. So, my theory crafting friends, let's finish with today's question of the day, and that is, do you think Rian Johnson is going to use the Jedi in his trilogy, his upcoming trilogy? Let me know in the comments below, and may the Force be with you.